Live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Just Bernard Show. We've got a really interesting show for you. I'm glad you're all joining us. As you know, we are streaming live over multiple platforms around the internet.
Live from
everywhere
the heart
from
of the
YouTube,
Blue Ridge.
Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, my website, and I don't know where else, but it's very exciting to be able to reach all of you across all of these platforms, and especially today because we have a very interesting guest joining us to talk to us about a wonderful new technology, which is right up our alley. Hello, everybody, and before that, I just wanted to thank you all for last week. We had that wonderful live Q&A session, which we don't normally get to have. I believe it's probably been one of the more popular shows we had since we've expanded our reach with these multiple platforms. So I am very happy that that went so well, and I look forward to seeing your chat questions during this broadcast, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some of those in the live chat itself. Anyway, so without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about my guest who's joining me today. His name is Mark Pitstick. He has over 40 years experience helping many people in hospitals, pastoral counseling settings, mental health centers, and holistic care centers. He also provided suicide prevention counseling and education to many people. His training includes a premedical degree from Ohio State University, graduate theology, pastoral counseling studies, Methodist Theological School of Ohio, master's in clinical psychology, Western Carolina University, and doctorate in chiropractic healthcare, Palmer College of Chiropractic. Mark became aware of his clairaudient experiences at age 10 and has been blessed with numerous miracles, revelatory, and spiritually transformative experiences. After working in hospitals with so many suffering and dying adults and children, he was motivated to find sensible, evidence-based answers to the questions that many people ask. And that's just like all of us here. We are proud to be experiential when it comes to these types of matters. So we're very, very happy to welcome you to the show, Mark. How are you doing this afternoon?
Excellent. My pleasure, Bernard.
Well, again, I want to thank you for being here. And so what we're going to be talking about today is SoulPhone Technology, which I find very interesting. And that this is a technology that perhaps we could communicate with our dearly departed. What made you want to explore this topic and want to share it with others?
Well, I've spent, since I was 19 years old, searching, I'm 67 now, searching for answers, whether there's really an afterlife or not, and whether there's some sort of creator, and if so, why is there so much suffering, etc. So I did all that, wrote my book Soul Proof, produced a documentary film, toured around the country, gave many lectures at unity churches, expos, retreats, etc. But about 6 years ago, Dr. Gary Schwartz, who I'll talk about in a moment, and I were involved in a group called Eternia.org, started by Evan Alexander, MD, and John Audette. its goal was to merge science and spirituality. Dr. Schwartz was the chairperson, I was the vice president, and we hit it off, seemed like kindred spirits. Well, he sent to us periodically some of the research that he had been doing, because he came up with 7 different experiments to measure the presence of, I'll say, quote, spirit, but really our term is post-material persons. So they're not gauzy, they're not ethereal, they're like you and I, 99.99% of who and what they are still exist in the next realm. So he sent this experiment where they were measuring the voice of post-material persons. And for all these, this is done at the University of Arizona, for all these experiments, there are controls. So this is done in a soundproof chamber. It's wrapped in copper foil, so it's decreased electromagnetic field fluctuation. It's in a room without heating and cooling ducts, so it's fairly impervious to temperature fluctuations. A vibration dampening floor. In other words, we're controlling all the variables as much as possible. Then for control, he had a microphone, a very expensive microphone with a 3-foot plexiglass dome, and hooked up to oscilloscope and computer. Well, with no one in the chamber, the results are what you expect. Flat line, like a flat line EEG or EKG. Nothing going along the x-axis. Then he had a human go into the chamber and whisper 9 words, paced 1 per second. And sure enough, the oscilloscope and the computer showed these words being generated. Then he asked one of the post-material persons, one of our A-team test pilots, to go in and yell the words, because hello, they're living in another dimension, kind of like where you are right now. And, they have to really amplify their signal for us to be able to detect it even slightly. The same 9 words, the same pacing. And sure enough, there were the same blips on the oscilloscope showing on the computer. The 9 words, your viewers might wonder, speaking for luminaries who have passed on, who were geniuses while on earth and who still care about those of us on earth and want to help. Their message was, we are here to help you heal your world. And when I read that, I got tears in my eyes, goosebumps, lump in my throat, and I knew that I was to reach out. So I did. He asked me to be the spokesperson for the SoulPhone project, because he's a serious scientist. He's mired in the weeds of research. And that was 4 years ago, and here we are today. Wow. And that does tug at my heartstrings as well. That's a wonderful message to hear from those who have transitioned. And what's the term you use? For those who have moved on? Non-material persons. Yeah, because we worked really hard to find the best language. Because language can really differ. So we'll say those who have died, non-physical persons. Well, it turns out they are physical. We know that from some of the exercises, from some of the experiments. And so that's why we settled upon post-material persons. They're not in our material world. They're beyond that. Right. Okay. So out of all the terminology to communicate, why would you guys choose, or why is the name called the SoulPhone Technology? Why is it like a phone that people can call, or for those of us that are new to it, what is SoulPhone? Sure. Yeah, Dr. Schwartz favored that in the beginning. It's a umbrella term, excuse me, because our ultimate goal is, yes, to have a smart device, much like a cell phone, only the SoulPhone, and even better, perhaps an app that can be used on different smart devices. So it's caused a little confusion among people, because when they hear about SoulPhone, they're like, well, where can I buy it? And when can I ring up one of my loved ones? Right now, we're working on what's called the Soul Switch. There are 4 devices that fall under the umbrella of the SoulPhone. So the Soul Switch is a binary indicator. various means that these post-material persons can, let's say, touch a device and close the circuit. And then they use that to indicate a yes or no. We are working right now on what's called the electronic soul switch. Once we get this working, 99% accurately, instantaneous yes and no answers, high reliability, then it's a relatively simple electrical engineering task to put 40 of those in series and effectively have a keyboard. And that will then be the sole keyboard allowing texting and typing with those living in another realm.
Wow, that's very, very amazing. Now, for those of us who know a little bit about, let's say, parapsychological research, I don't know if they even use that term anymore, but some of these, modern ghost hunters, they show off all these different devices like electromagnetic pulse readers and whatnot. How is this the same and or different, or does that elevate that prior research and those tools that were used in the past?
That's a big question, Bernard. How many hours do we have? Well, first of all, a lot of the serious parapsychologists are actually skeptical about the issue of survival of consciousness. We know because we work with a number of them. They're part of Dr. Schwartz's, what he calls devil's advocate team. And actually a couple prominent parapsychologists, give me permission to use their name, but well known in the field, are assisting us with our latest experiment because Dr. Schwartz is writing a paper right now that he hopes to publish in the journal Frontiers in Psychology. Well, he had some of these different scientists read it, and one of their concerns was the possibility of unintentional, unconscious side effects. And we've done a lot of work to rule that out. In other words, computer automated experiments. The experimenters are at home asleep, random time generators, so no one knows when it's starting. Likewise, the computer generates which A team members go to which labs. Even so, excuse me, allergies. Even so, the parapsychologists were concerned, and so we've redoubled our efforts to rule out all but the most remote and uncontrollable side effects of the experimenters by using a triple blind 3-experiment method, and that's too complicated to talk about.
Right. Well, especially in the 20 minutes that we have left.
Yeah. So to address the rest of your questions, there are a lot of devices out there, EVP, ITC. The ones we've seen, the images are quite blurry, and the sounds are largely unintelligible. That's why they put subscripts below it. See, this is what they're saying. Well, you play it for 10 people, you're going to get 10 opinions.
Yeah.
Also, most of those are spontaneous. Sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. I'm not discrediting different research in this area. Konstantin Radi, for example, a Latvian psychologist who's done a lot of work, and others. But what we want is a device that's been developed at a university under replicated, controlled, double-blind studies published in peer-reviewed journals. This is all what has to happen to be really accepted as scientifically demonstrated, to obtain large funding, and to create these commercializable devices so that everybody on the planet can afford it.
Very good.
The last thing I would say about this, we want our devices to be highly reliable, just like a cell phone, just as accurate, and so on, which to my knowledge, these other devices even come close.
Wow. And I guess it'll be accessible to everybody when and if we finally get it all down.
Yeah, we can't give them away. I mean, there's tremendous amount of cost so far in the future, but our goal is anyone who can afford a cell phone should be able to afford a soul phone.
Right. And I can't help, a lot of my viewers and followers over the years have been mediums and psychics, including myself. And I I can't help but wonder, are you having any mediums to assist you in this, and what are their thoughts on this? Is it going to add to their service that they offer their clients or the work that they do? What has been what's been going on in that realm?
Yeah, two major questions there. First of all, medium research is actually how Dr. Schwartz got into this area of, quote, spirit communication technology. In the late 1900s, so like 1998, he started doing research that's described in his book, The Afterlife Experiments. Worked with about 20 different highly evidential mediums. And he showed that some of them had rock star abilities, 90% success rate. This is despite being double blind. There's no way they could know who the subject is. They're in different rooms. The medium doesn't even hear the sitter's voice, and yet they had those kind of results. Versus the control group, which had no mediumistic abilities, which had about 23% success rate, what you expect from guessing. Well, after those studies, about 10 of those mediums became colleagues and friends, and they started independently sending him information, and they say, gee, Gary, you know, Albert Einstein keeps telling me, contact Dr. Schwartz. He's supposed to develop technology so we have a real voice in the world, so we can really increase the quality and quantity of information conveyed. Because, as you know, even the very best mediums have bad days. Sometimes they lapse in the monkey mind. So mediums have been a huge help over the last 20 years. And it's really funny, and this will all come out in the future in movies and books about it, but sometimes a medium, I mean, top names, will say, Gary, you're driving me crazy. I don't even know if these are words, but they're telling me you need to inhibit the capacitance and increase the impedance. And they're like, are these even English words? And Gary says, thank you, that's exactly what I need to hear right now, given my stage of technology. Now, for the other half of your question, what's that going to mean for mediums in the future? We see, first of all, some people are still going to want, in other words, a really good medium may be able to come up with information that somehow wasn't conveyed in a talk, a contact with a loved one, especially when it's typing and texting. Secondly, mediums can become counselors and teachers. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a huge paradigm shift with this. And that's part of why Dr. Schwartz and I wrote the book, Greater Reality Living, because people's minds are going to be blown. Some people will be upset, fundamentalist religions are going to, who knows what, get a bee under their bonnet. And so mediums, having had the firsthand experience with all this, can be part of the vanguard for helping people around the world realize, hey, this is real, this is a good thing, nothing to be afraid of. And thirdly, we will be having these devices used. We already have a list of psychologists and psychotherapists, grief counselors, who want to use even the first device in their offices to help people who are grieving deeply. Well, mediums can use those and help explain those as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would actually become a tool for the medium or the intuitive counselor, or add to the intuitive counseling process, perhaps, is a great way of looking at it. Now, with that being said, we're talking about how people are no longer here in this physical realm, and I've had contact with multiple entities on the other side, whether they be ancestors and or what I consider transdimensional entities. What is there or has there been any type of work and or communication from something other than a human that passed? Has there been a transdimensional intelligence that might have come through, or is any of that in the works as far as the experiments go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful question. Thank you. We have done some research with one purported angel And we have to say purporting you because doing scientific research, we can't say absolutely, but the energy was just so much greater than any of the humans. It was called the Sophia Project 15 years ago. But he wanted to start with humans first, post-material persons. Our second book and the second wave of this research will indeed be to develop communication to allow, or technology to allow communication with higher energy entities, angels, guides, master teachers, whatever the terminology is. That will be, as you can imagine, a whole different set of equipment to measure their input. They would blow up the very sensitive equipment we have now because their energy is so much greater compared to humans. And then, by the way, the third book and the third wave of research for the future will be to communicate with source energy itself.
Wow. Now that would be something. I wonder what kind of equipment you'll need for that. This would have a lot besides the real world ramifications it would have for individuals. And now that we've dipped our toe into the whole transdimensional communication aspect, I can't help but wonder if this technology, say 100 or 200 years, hopefully less, down the road, could be utilized in a way to communicate with other civilizations in other galaxies with their technology. Maybe just. What are your thoughts on that?
You need to expand your mind a little, Bernard. You're so inside the box. I'm just kidding. Yeah, we love it. There's certainly a possibility. Two things. First of all, I realize we haven't mentioned the two other devices. So after the Soul Keyboard and this greater influx of communication, then the next device will be the Soul Voice, like talking on a phone, and then Soul Video, like we're doing now, be able to see and hear the person. The ultimate goal with that, and there's been some initial research on that, would be a 3D view and even holographic. So it's the next best thing to the person being there with you, whether it's a, quote, departed loved one or a, quote, deceased luminary. But as far as communicating with people on other planets, Dr. Schwartz, and for those who don't know him, he's 76 years old, Harvard graduate, professor at Harvard, tenured professor at Yale, where he was among a handful of people who pioneered the field of behavioral medicine. This guy is a certifiable genius. He's had 2 near-death experiences when he was a child, which I think is part of the reason his brain works the way it does. Instead of seeing through a pinhole, he's seeing through more of the greater reality, all that is. Senior professor now at the University of Arizona for 30 years. This guy is a genius. He is an expert in what's called systems theory and also quantum physics. And part of that, he says all that research, also what's called complexity theory, requires that anything we have on Earth, any technology, should be available, stored in space, a zero-point field, Akashic records, wherever you want to call it. So if indeed advanced civilizations exist, and we're quite sure they are, then it should be a simple matter for them to develop similar technology in their realm, and then at that point all we need is a integrative interface between our technology and theirs for communication. So yeah, hopefully we'll be talking with those on that. You see that one star off to the left of your ear there?
The seer?
Yeah, that one.
I think that would be wonderful. And yes, it makes sense. They would need to have I don't want to say duplicate, but similar interface so they could, and language, I guess, a way to communicate. It's the Star Trek person in my mind is going, well, we can use a translator. That's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and here's one. I don't think you're old enough to remember phone operators, but when I was a kid, you made a call, operator, and they would actually physically plug a wire in from your line to who you wanted to talk to. Well, we already have a number of post-material persons who have volunteered to be soul operators to assist those in the next realm who want to communicate but perhaps couldn't type or live before there was this kind of technology, and so to assist them in any way they need. So perhaps they could assist communication with extraterrestrials, other planets as well.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. So how far along is the technology? When do we see the SoulPhone being ready for public consumption?
Yeah, big question there. That depends totally on funding. And for example, we're probably looking at $1 million, $1.5 million is all to complete the electronic soul switch, and then to prepare for the keyboard. So we're actually just a few $1 million away from having a keyboard that's ready to be commercialized. We have some fundraising going on. That's part of the reason I educate. We never know who we might reach. In early 2021, we will begin public demonstrations of this. The electronic switch should be suitably stable to have public demonstrations. We'll also start client sessions where individuals can at least get yes or no answers to a series of questions using photos. Is this me when I was a little kid? Were you at this birthday party last week? And those will be highly meaningful. His third peer-reviewed journal a paper will be published. Also, quite likely at that point, a TV show and or a movie. All that's in the works. Point is, there's a lot of big, exciting things going on right now. Multi-center studies. We're preparing to have his research replicated at 6 different universities or institutes. So all that will be in place by the end of the year. And once all that's available, if we don't have funding by then, we certainly will gather them.
That's fantastic, and I'm very, very impressed with how far this project has gone. It's about time. It's going to be 2021, as you said. With that, let me ask you: has there been? I don't know if you could share this on this particular platform, but has there been any how should we say, epiphanies or information that has come through from them that has really blown your mind, for lack of a better term? Have you learned anything other than move the switch over here, move the switch over here? Have they offered anything as far as what the death experience is like, or what is it like on the other side?
Of course, it's of huge interest, and we can't wait to focus on that a lot. However, to date, we've largely focused on working with this A-team, post-material luminaries, on the technology. However, 2.5 years ago, Dr. Schwartz and one of the mediums agreed to let me ask a series of questions, in part to pay. I've been working 50 hours a week without pay for 4 years, so they thought I deserved something. And imagine, if you could ask 10 questions of these people, and we're talking Einstein, Edison, Tesla, Carl Sagan, etc. My first question was, because Dr. Schwartz and I had just finished the Greater Reality Living book, and I said, hey, this is being prepared for publication. Is there anything we missed? And Einstein said, is there anything we missed to help promote world peace? And Einstein said, we are aware. Well, I gave them an overview of the book, and they said, what you are presenting seems totally sufficient and should create a tipping point. So that was great. Another question I asked was, we hate to bother you all unless you can multilocate. Most people know the term bilocate. Mm-hmm. Well, we had some initial evidence that they could be in more, sometimes many more than two places at the same time doing different things. So I said, is it true you all can multilocate? And they said, yes. And I said, well, 5 different things? Yeah, easily. 10? Easily. At some point, I felt like an auctioneer. They maxed out around 50 to 100. 50 to 100 different activities at the same time in different places. So that gives us, and consciously, there's some evidence that we as humans unconsciously multilocate. Mm-hmm. About only 25% of our soul's energy is manifesting in this earthly experience. But to be able to consciously multilocate and keep all those plates in there, that just sounds heavenly to us. And then the last thing I'll share was, I said, when we have sufficient technology, even the keyboard, to allow y'all a voice to come through, would you be willing and able to give webinars? And on top subjects, responsible and optimal leadership, sustainable planetary wellness, health problems, etc. The list. The medium started laughing. She said, they're pushing each other out of the way to get first in line. And Nicola said, if you think I came up with some amazing inventions while I was on Earth, wait till you see what I've been working on here. And the word free energy just came up in my mind. So super exciting. We live in a very discouraging time right now, as you know, the racial strife, the pandemic, all the things going on, politicism, political division, and so on. Well, this is a huge source of help. First of all, again, to be able to communicate at some point with our loved ones, see and hear them. But secondly, this great influx from these wonderful minds who still care to help us, not do it for us, but to help us with our most pressing problems.
That will be fascinating and much, much needed and welcomed, I hope, by all of humanity at that point. So we're running out of time. Do you have any last comments that you would like to share with everybody?
Yes, that there are lots of resources for people who want to learn more about this. First of all, the website for the SoulPhone project is soulphone.org. Secondly, on my website, soulproof.com, are 69 now free articles addressing the toughest problems, because I get emails from people around the world every day. So I just wrote, when a loved one's body dies by suicide, when a loved one's human form is murdered, etc. By the way, notice my specific language. I didn't say when your loved one dies by suicide. Nobody really dies when their body dies. Big difference. So 69 free articles addressing anything you can think of, your toughest problems, at soulproof.com. Also, I mentioned I was a radio show host. My interviews with Wayne Dyer, Brian Weiss, Michael Newton, Bernie Siegel, you name it, top consciousness experts on the biggest questions people wonder about. Also, free newsletters. So those websites, again, soulphone.org, soulproof.com. And last thing I would say is, Jesus and other teachers like that were trying to teach us the great news that sets us free. And sometimes it's couched in a language that's difficult for us to understand now. But the great news is, and again, supported by lots of scientific, clinical, and firsthand experience evidence, is that death is not an end. We do see loved ones again. We are integral parts of Source right now, and a whole list of benefits. So I encourage people to educate themselves about it. We teach ways to internalize that so they really know it. And then, relax, enjoy the ride, do what they came here to do, let their light shine.
Absolutely. And that is a perfect way to wrap up the show. Thank you so much, Michael. It's been a pleasure to have you here, Mark. And again, that's Mark Pitstick. And you can go to soulphone.org. Is that correct?
Correct.
And is there also the soulphonefoundation.org?
No, well, that URL rolls over to soulphone.org.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. Okay. Very good. All right. Well, thank you very much. And everyone, we've got actually, speaking of bilocation and multilocation, the topic next week on the Just Bernard Show is going to be bilocation. So we have another wonderful guest to talk to us about that next week. Enjoy, everyone. Have a wonderful week. I love you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.